Welcome back for another video on HAIKYU Fly High, and today we are going to talk about the latest JP character, which is going to be SP Shirabu, or the beach themed Shirabu. Now, he's actually coming at a very interesting time, and in fact, the latest three Japanese characters are all at a very interesting time because they're the new beach trio. And on global, if everything goes well, next week we should be getting the rerun banner for SP Bokuto and also the other members of Beach Trio as well. So before you actually make up your mind on whether or not you want to summon for those rerun banners, it's going to be important to understand about the new Beach Trio that has just been added on JP to know kind of the synergy between them, and that basically just so that you have the complete information before deciding to commit your resources on something for the beach trio rerun banners, etc. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about just Shirabu, but I will also be making a video on Hanamaki in the near future as well. Okay, so let's go through Shirabu. Skill 1, pretty straightforward. He will be increasing his set stat and also awareness. This is based on the amount of team morale gained. So at the start of match, assuming you don't actually place any awareness potential build on him, etc., he probably wouldn't be critting for the very first 1 or 2 rallies. However, afterwards, he will be guaranteed to be critting after he stack everything up. Okay? Now, then the next thing is going to be when he's actually on the court, whenever you saw it cast an ultimate, the power attack stats is also going to increase by 3% up to maximum 15%. Not a huge amount of buff, but better than nothing. Okay? Next, we move on to skill 2. This is going to be a setter dump. The skill multiplier is kind of in line with all of the other skill 2s, etc. It does also have the additional effect of your resetting the cooldown for your other player's spiking skill. This to me is completely useless because the vast majority of the time you are only using setter dump to buy yourself an extra round when your other characters do not have their ultimate ready. And normally, because when you actually do a setter dump or do a spike, etc., by the time the ball comes back onto your side for you to spike again, that's already going to be 2 net crossing. And vast majority of the time, by that point, at least one other of your player would already have reached the end of the cooldown for their ultimate skill anyway. So even if he doesn't actually reset their cooldown, they would naturally reach the end of cooldown. So that's kind of what I feel like this additional effect from skill 2 is going to be completely useless, and there's no need for you to do set a dump with Shirabu. Next, move on to skill 3. This is his signature skill. Basically, what's going to happen is that when you're inside Him Awakening, when you actually cast your ultimate attack, which is this focus set, your player's awareness and strength are going to increase by massive amount, okay? Those are some of the highest buff you'll be able to see. Like strength by 150%, just absolutely insane. Now, this only lasts for 2 net crossings, and if you actually bear in mind, this only get activated when you use your ultimate set skill. Basically, what this is saying is that the only person who will be able to enjoy this massive amount of buff will be the person spiking right after Shirabu's set. And in fact, after the spike, your team would also exit Timber Awakening. Now, this part of the spike, forcing your team to exit Timber Awakening, is basically tailored specifically for SP Ushijima, because if you actually take a look at SP Ushijima skill 1, when he's not inside Timber Awakening, he will actually be able to spam his ultimate attack. So when you're playing SP Ushijima, you want to make sure you are inside Him Awakening for the shortest amount of time possible, and Shirabu being able to force your team to come out of it straight away, it's going to be very important if you do actually want to play SP Ushijima alongside with him. And by the way, I have already posted a video for SP Ushijima V2, so do check that out if you want to understand exactly how he works. Then the second part of his skill 3 is going to be when he's actually on the court and your team is not in Team Morale Awakening, your strength is also going to increase. Now, previously I already said that his the strength buff he will be getting, it's going to be 150%, which is like by far the highest amount of buff you will be able to see in this game. However, even outside of Team Awakening, if you're actually able to stack everything up, this is going to be a solid 70%, which to be honest, I also feel like this is probably the most amount of strength buff you're able to get in this game to your entire team. Because remember, unlike the Team Morale Awakening, which only lasts for 2 net crossing, this is actually going to be for your entire team. And I believe probably the best AoE strength buff in the game right now is SP Iwazuyumi, and he can only provide probably like just over 50%, if I remember correctly. So the fact that Shirabu is able to provide 70 even at skill 1, skill level 1, if you're actually able to get him to skill levels, Yeah, level 3 for his skill 3, it can go all the way up to 75%. So actually, it's not that big an increase. But still, 70% guaranteed strength buff once you're able to completely stack it up. 120 points of team morale, it does going to take you a bit of time, so you probably only see it towards the later half of the match. But still, if you're going to play SP Shirabu, it's very likely you will be playing a very high morale focused team. And at that point, you are probably able to enjoy the 70% strength buff for at least half of the match, and that's going to be amazing. And remember, this is going to be the absolute minimum amount of strength buff Shirabu is able to provide, because if it's actually inside the Morale Awakening, it's actually going to jump all the way to 150, okay? This alone already makes Shirabu one of the best strength buffer in the game. Now we move on to Shirabu's ultimate attack, which is obviously going to be a setting skill. Now this one is capable of buffing up the power of your next power spike by 150%. Now bear in mind, this is not actually buffing up the power attack stats, this is buffing up the power skill multiplier, okay? So take an example, if you're playing him with Ushijima normally is doing 260% multiplier of his power attack stat. If you actually have Shirabu setting his ultimate to him, it's going to be 260 plus this additional 150, okay? So that's basically what this buff means. Now bear in mind, this is only for power spiking, so obviously that kind of already shows you Shirabu can only be played with power specialities, etc. Okay, now then there's also going to be one very simple sentence at the end of the skill, however it's going to be very important, which is the fact that when he's not inside Team Awakening, the cooldown of this ultimate skill is going to reduce down to just 4 net crossing. Now, the reason why this is very important is because it just then allow you to guarantee that whenever he's inside Team Awakening, he's guaranteed to be able to use at least his focus cell at least once during that time. Because within 4 net crossings, you will be able to, even like in the worst case scenario, let's say you enter cooldown right before you enter Team Awakening. Team Awakening lasts for 8 touches, and you will be able to get through 4 net crossings in those 8 touches. Okay, because every single time when the ball comes back to your side, so every 2 net crossing, you should be able to in theory perform 4 actions, which is going to be block, receive, set, and also spiking. So that's kind of why within 4 net crossings, you would be able to perform 8 actions, and that guarantees that whenever you enter Team Awakening, you'll be guaranteed to be able to use your ultimate attack, and therefore guaranteed to be able to use all of those buffs without wasting them. The only exception is going to be if you actually play Shirabu alongside with Yu Bokuto, in which case Yu Bokuto would actually reduce the number of touches for Team Awakening down to just 6 touches, and then in those kind of cases, you could get very unlucky and actually just waste the entire Team Awakening without being able to actually activate his ult, and that could be annoying. However, this would actually be fixed in Shirabu's skill resistance 2, because when he's actually in skill resistance 2, what's going to happen here is that as soon as you enter Team Awakening, the cooldown for your ultimate attack is going to reset, okay? So even if you do want to play Yu Bokuto, as long as you have him as skill resistance 2, it's also going to be fine. If you do not play Shirabu with Yu Bokuto, then the fact that of skill 4 alone is already able to guarantee him able to use his ult every single time during Team Awakening. Okay, now the other effect he's also going to get in his skill rhythm 2 is that when he uses his ultimate set once again, it's actually also going to increase the power and quick attack stats by 40% as well. Now this is actually going to be interesting because this actually makes Shirabu a complete package in terms of the buff he's able to provide. Now if you guys remember the damage formula, there are 4 different components in the damage formula. Component number 1, it's going to be strength, which he can already provide due to his skill 3. Component number 2 is going to be his skill multiplier for the spikes, which he can provide with his skill 4. Component number 3 will be the power attack stats itself, which now he's able to provide via his skill resistance 2. So the only thing which will be missing in the damage formula is actually going to be attack technique. And take a look at his bond. If you actually play the new Beach Trio, he would also be able to improve attack technique by 10% as well. So basically, once you actually have Shirabu as skill resistance 2, he is actually capable of covering every single component of the damage formula, and obviously when you multiply everything together across different multiplier, that's going to be better than adding on the same multiplier over and over again. So that's kind of what you will actually see a quite big difference, even though it says only 40%. However, because that is literally the only multiplier Shirabu is not able to provide in his base kit, you would actually see quite a bit of an uptick in terms of the buff you're able to provide for your spiker. Okay. And then we move on to his skill rating 4. When your team morale increased by a total of 600 points, Shirabu's own strength is also going to increase by 100%. Reaching 600 morale is going to be fairly easy, so you should be able to enjoy this for vast majority of the match. And then what's furthermore is that for his skill 3, when you actually exit Team Awakening, what's going to happen is that your strength will increase by further 40% and also your spirit as well, all the way until your next Team Awakening. Now, I already mentioned earlier that with his skill 3, you can get minimum 70% outside Team Awakening. Now, if you're able to add on another 40% as well from his skill rating 4, that's going to be meaning that Shirabu is able to offer minimum of 110% strength outside of Team Awakening and also go up to 150% during Team Awakening. And this makes him by far the strongest AoE strength buffer in the game. Okay, so skill rating 4 is also gonna further cement this role that he will be playing, which is the best strength buffer for this game. And then in terms of the bonds, I already talked about this beach trio bond. This is very important because not only it actually increases your team morale, but also increase attack technique, which is the only part of the multiplier Sherwood doesn't have covered already. And then he also is going to get this extra attack with Ushijima, which is also very nice as well. Just take a look at this multiplier. This is a very, very high multiplier for a bond attack as well. Okay, so all in all, how good is Sherwood? Sure, it was absolutely amazing, I have to say. Now, I have to say, if you actually take a look at what he's able to provide inside Team Awakening, like I said, he can literally cover every single aspect of the damage formula with the buff he's able to provide, assuming you actually have him as duped as skill rating 2 minimum. And also the other thing, which is also very noticeable, is that if you actually compare him to the other power setter in the game, noticeably SP Oikawa. Even when you have SP Oikawa as skill rating 4, what SP Oikawa is able to provide is only going to be 10% attack technique, 100% strength buff, and also like I think like 1,500 raw stats to power spiking. And then if you actually take a look at the equivalent stats that Shirabu was able to provide, the attack technique buff is going to be in line with what SP Oikawa is able to provide. The strength buff is actually going to be more than what SP Oikawa is able to provide. And similarly, this power attack stats should also be a lot more than what SP Oikawa is able to provide as well. So even if you actually have SP Oikawa as skill rating 4, which is one of the best buffer in the game, Shirabu can still go in line with what SP Oikawa is able to offer, and potentially even more, because of the fact that he can actually go higher than SP Oikawa on at least 3 of the stats multiplier. Okay. The only thing he may be slightly lacking in comparison to SP Oikawa is going to be this buff in terms of the skill multiplier, because SP Oikawa can actually offer us a tiny bit more. However, this guarantee 150 is still very, very high in comparison. Okay, so as Shirabu is definitely going to be one of the best buffer in the game and easily at the same tier as SP Oikawa, assuming you're actually going to be inside Team Awakening. And there is actually going to be, in theory, a way for you to go into Team Awakening every single rally. The only thing for that is that I feel like I'm not going to tell you guys what that team is now. And in fact, all credits to Deep Sea Veteran on my Discord server as well. He was the one that crafted this team as well. If you really want to find out, you can reach out to him directly. But the reason why I'm not going to talk about this team is that I feel like it still need to be tested on whether or not it can indeed make Shirabu go into Team Awakening every single rally. Like mathematically, it's going to be enough, but the only thing I'm not too sure is going to be on the timing of when morale gets added, and also whether or not you can actually activate Team Awakening during the right timing, because it kind of have a very short timing in the sense that you need to literally press Team Awakening right after you receive, but before you set. And first of all, I'm not sure whether or not that's feasible. And second of all, if there's any part of the timing for morale gain is going to be slightly different than what the skill description says, then even though mathematically it may be enough on paper, you may not actually be able to do it in theory in an actual match. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm not going to talk about there. But in theory, it could be possible. And if you're actually able to get Shirabu using his Team Awakening skill tree every single rally, then like I said, he can actually give even more buff than SP Oikawa, which is absolutely insane. However, there's a bit of uncertainty, and that's kind of what I just want to caution you guys on this aspect. But overall, he's definitely going to be one of the top tier setters. All you have to remember to do is just to build a team around him in order to make sure that you do go into Team Awakening as consistent as possible and also as fast as possible. Okay, so that's going to be my thoughts on this new character. Let me know what you guys think, and also do you think he's going to be any good?